Hi, welcome to Formarte English Academy. We're going to be working today on unit number 13. Let's go together to that unit. It's page 87, I'm sorry, 86, and we're going to be working on that unit today. So let's go very quick to it and see or to check out how we can start this lesson. Just a moment. Okay, now let's go very quick to today's lesson, which name is Education for Life, and that's what we're going to be working today. First of all, remember that the speaking English part two of this test is always to compare, right? And in the C1, well, since we're practicing the B2, we only have two different pictures. But remember that in in C1, we're going to have three pictures. So from those three pictures, you only need to choose two of them, right? So from those three, you need to choose two. But let's practice here right now. So we have two different pictures, and they will always tell us to compare the photographs. Remember that in the last lesson we saw a little bit, or we practiced a little bit of this part. And remember that if you find yourself describing, a very good option is to say in contrast. So that can help you on this part. For example, you can say here, well, in picture one, I see three different students, and they are just learning online or on the internet. In contrast, I see the other um, picture. I see a teacher, right? So that can be a very good option for you to start comparing also two pictures, right? You can describe, and at the same time you can say in contrast, right? Or you can also say, well, I see less people than uh, less people in this picture than in the other one, and so on, right? So we can also use some comparatives like the ones that we have been practicing in class, but also, again, if you see yourself describing, then you can just say in contrast, and that can help you a lot. So you can practice that right now if you want with these two pictures and trying to see if you can describe. Remember, you have 1 minute to describe, and also they will give you another question. In this case, it's says talk about the differences and say which school is closer to your own learning experience. So in the real test, you will need to compare in 1 minute, compare and ask, and also answer this question, which is closer to your learning experience. So that's what you can, if you want, you can pause a little bit the video, and for 1 minute, you can practice this speaking part. Now, we're going to be focusing on the listening part. Remember, I'll be sending you this audio on the WhatsApp group so that you can have it and practice it also. But let me explain to you and let me read to you the instructions. It says you're going to hear a radio interview with two work colleagues, Sandra Wilson and Mike Tripp, who also used to attend the same school. So in this lesson, we're going to focus, and in a moment, yeah, in a very recent time, we're going to look and or to practice a little bit of the reporting verbs and the way to use them. And in general, we are going to learn a little bit of reported speech today. So that's why is what they recommend here is for you to listen to these reported statements, A and H below, and then it says now listen to the recording and tick the statements that are true. Compare your answers and listen again to check. So that's what we're going to be working on, and I will also send you the answers for these exercises. So let's uh, let's pause the video for a moment, and we're going then to do the listening part. Okay, once we did this listening part, we're going to focus on the reading part. So we can go to the next page, and we can see here where it says collocations part 8, this part over here. It says opposite are some short descriptions of the first job some famous people had. Work out which job was done by each person. So we have some famous people here. Uh, we have Madonna, we have Annie Lennox, Tom Cruise. Well, we have different characters here. And what the exercise is about you reading what the person was working on and trying to guess which character is the one there. This is just to check out on vocabulary. What I recommend is that if you don't know a word, or if there's a word that is a little bit difficult for you to look for it in a dictionary and try to learn it. And also, what they recommend is that in the writing part, if you can use some of these vocabulary, it will be great. Okay, so that's the recommendation for this part. So also, you can pause a little bit of video, then read this part, and of course, we will be sending you the answers uh, right away. Okay. Now, once you do that, something that I really want to take a little bit of time in this class is to explain to you a little bit of those reporting verbs. And we already know a little bit of, as teachers, we already know a little bit how to use reported speech, right? If somebody talks to me in the simple present, then if I want to report it, that I will need to use the simple past. And if that person used, for example, the modal can, then I need to use the modal could, right? In general, we know that, but there are some uh, specific reporting verbs that we need to use them in a different way. And that's what I want for us to see right now. So I'm going to open this presentation so that you can know a little bit of how this works. And also, I can explain to you, or I'm going to send you a link so that you can study in a better way these reporting verbs. So let's start then our presentation. Okay, for example, with the verb accuse and also with the verb assured, we use this formula over here. We use, in this case, the verb, we use an object and a preposition. Okay, for example, here it is. She accuses the verb, the object, him, and the preposition of, right? Then we also have Mark assured me he would. Okay, so these are some examples or some verbs that follow this formula: a verb, object plus preposition. So that's a very good way for us to practice these reporting verbs. Let's go to the second example. Then we have verb plus infinitive. Okay. Before that, I'm sorry. Yeah, we first let's go with verb object infinitive. Okay. So for example, we have the verb advised. So here we have she advised me to start doing exercises. So in this example, we have here the verb advise, then the object me, and then the infinitive to start. Okay. So that's a way to use this reporting verb. Why is it called reporting? Reporting because we're reporting what somebody else said. In this case, what she advised. Or the other example, what the boss warned. I'm just telling people what the boss warned. Okay, so that's why they're called reporting verbs. So, for example, with the verb warn, I'm using, of course, the verb warn, the object me, and the infinitive to work. In this case, we're seeing the infinitive in negative, not to work. Okay, so in this case, that will be the example using these reporting verbs. Another example is verb plus infinitive. How which verbs allow me to use, or which reporting verbs are used with the verb plus the infinitive. In this case, we use agreed. For example, they agreed to meet on Monday, or my cousin offered to give us a ride. Okay, so we are using the verb offered to give us a ride. So, what the best thing to do here is just to try to memorize these verbs and the way we need to use them. Some verbs we can use them in different ways. So that's why I'm going to send you this link so that you can try to study them and to so that everything will be more clear for you in this matter. So let's go to the other example. Well, we have a little bit more of verbs talking about verb plus infinitive. Well, agreed. They agreed to meet on Monday. I refused to lend John any more money. He's always asking. He's always asking for it. Or the verb promised, right? He said he promised to buy me lunch. So those are verbs that we use them with just the infinitive after the verb, right? Now let's go with the other one. We have verb plus that. So that one is very important because there's a lot of a lot of reporting verbs that follow that. For example, decided. I had Sarah decided that she will study more often. Then we have the president announced that the national deficit is increasing. Then we also have my father explained that he had no intention of going to the beach this year. And also my coworker pointed out that we will have a new project this summer. And with the verb suggested, we also use that. She suggested that I should do more exercises. So with all these verbs, we are using after the verb we're using that. So that's a way of the use of these reporting verbs. So it's very, very important. Please write them down, try to practice them because it's something very important that's going to help us a lot for this C1 test, probably in part 4, also in part 2, and even part 1 of the reading and use of English test. This is going to be very useful for us. Now we can see the way of using the verb followed by a preposition and a gerund. For example, the verb insisted. In this case, I say I insisted on the preposition on and the gerund having seconds. It was delicious. Okay, so with the verb insist, we use this procedure: verb plus preposition plus gerund. And then just the verb plus gerund. In this case, with suggested, we use also just the gerund. Mike suggested going by car. So that will be a way also of using these reported verbs. In general, there are different ways of using these verbs, and I will be, again, I will send you that link so that you will be able to see them in specific. So please work with this exercise. I will say here we are now, as you can see on page 88. So you can see here the part number 2 where it says match the quotes A and D with the reported statements 1 and 4. So let's do that right now so that you can maybe warm up a little bit with the reporting verbs. But before doing that, something that is very, very important is for us to read together this corpus spot. Now we know why they are wrong, right? It says be careful when using reporting verbs. The Cambridge Learning Corpus shows that the exam candidates often make mistakes in the structures that follow them. Here are 2 of the most common mistakes. My father suggested. Now, can we just see that the verb suggested is always followed by that? So in this case, that's why this one is wrong, because I can't say my father suggested me to read this wonderful story. No, we need to say my father suggested that I should read this wonderful story. Or for example, the verb explain, always we can't put following a pronoun with explain. For example, here, we explain her the situation. We can't say that. So we will need to say we explain the situation to her. So again, that's are some rules that probably we are not that familiar with that can help us a lot. So let's do this example or this practice over here, part two, and uh, and then just says match the quotes A and D with the reported statements 1 and 4. So let's do that right now. You can pause for a moment the video so that you can do this part right now. Now, well, there's another listening part that we're going to be working on, and now we're going to be practicing a real part of the test, part three of the listening test. And it says here in listening part three, the 8 options A and H may be presented as sentences that summarize what each speaker says. Identify keywords in the sentences to help you predict content, right? So these are the examples that we have. It says you will hear 5 different callers to a radio phone in giving their views about educational performance in written. So it says first read A and H and underline the keywords. Okay, so we're gonna be reading or reading this part first, and then it says listen to speaker one. Complete this summary using present tenses. Then match the content to one of the options A and H. Okay, so that's prior the real part of the test, which is this one that says now listen to speaker 2 and 5 and note down the main points each person makes. Then report their views by writing summaries similar to the one in 5. Match your summaries A and H and write your choices below. So let's work on this listening part and so that you can work on that for a moment. And we will be continuing with the lesson after this listening part. Okay, let's continue then with this lesson. And what's next is the speaking part, number 4. Sorry, not yeah, number 3. I'm sorry. Speaking part number 3. If you can find somebody, or maybe well, if you are just alone in your house, or if somebody can help you, that'll be great. Because remember that in this speaking part, we need to discuss or talk with a partner. And remember that in this part, you have always 2 minutes to discuss the general question, and then you need to choose uh, in a superlative way the best 2 answers and also discuss for 1 minute. For example, we have here, it says, look at the task and talk together for about 2 minutes. So what do you need to talk for 2 minutes? It's just, how could these different groups help to raise educational standards in schools? Parents, teachers, the media, the government, local companies. So you have 2 minutes to discuss that. Then you're going to have 1 minute to decide which 2 groups have the most responsibility for a child's education. Remember, next week we're going to be practicing the speaking test. So this is going to help you a lot for the coming for next lesson, which we're going to be doing the speaking test. So work on that right now. You can pause the video and work for 2 minutes with the general question, and then 1 minute to for you guys to choose the most responsibility for child's education. Once you do that, let's practice a little bit part 4 of the test in this uh, part 10. Okay, it's very important for you to do that. This part 10 was going to be the homework, so we're going to see these answers next Saturday. It's very important for you to practice part 4 of the test where they give you a word, and using the same word you need to try to say exactly what this first sentence says. In this case, at the same time you can practice reported speech, practicing part 4 of the test. And at the end of this part in the exam folder 7, we really need to practice the multiple matching of the listening test. Okay, so everything is today is going to be focused on reporting speech and also focus on the listening part, in this case, listening part 3, which is the multiple matching. So let's just read together this very quick. It says in this part of the listening paper, you hear 5 short extracts, which are all related to each other in some way. It may be that speakers are all talking about the same subject or experiences. Another possible link may be filling our or job. You need to match each of the 5 extracts to one of the 8 options. You hear the extracts twice. It is very important that you take the opportunity to check your answers carefully during the second listening. One mistake could affect 2 answers. So there is a script, and I'm going to send you this script so that you can maybe understand a little bit more. But remember that the real test looks something like this, and we have already seen it. We have been practicing a lot of this. Remember that in B2, there's only one option, but in C1, I'm sorry, we're gonna have different options, right? So in this case, they give you the recording script so that you can practice a little bit more, and that's what I really want for you to do in your house. Listen to this video and at the same time read the script so that you can get familiar with the accent of the different people that we're going to have. Very quick here, we can see they give us some tips or some advices. It says, don't sit looking out of the window while you're waiting for the recording to start. Read the questions carefully. So while the recording starts, remember they will always give you sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes 45 seconds. So in those seconds, it's very, very important that you can read carefully every single part and underline some keywords. Also, it says try to predict what each person might say. That's always something that Cambridge tells us. Try to predict different things. Okay, so we're gonna end up this lesson with this listening part. Remember, you can send me a message anytime, and I'll be glad to help you and to serve you or to send you some extra practice. Remember, we are getting closer to our test, and it's very important that we could, any questions that we might have or all the practices that we could have are very, very important for us to do. So please send me a message anytime. If you have any questions about this lesson or about some other lessons, please let me know. And again, we'll be glad to serve you. So thank you very much for your time. I know that we as teachers, we're always very busy, but I hope that you could take these 20 or 25 minutes of the time of this lesson, and I hope that you could be able to understand it and to also practice it, not only, of course, for our English to grow, but also to practice for this C1 test. So see you next time. Thank you very much.